just for anyone who wasn't here before, yesterday's sessions are now online. So if you go onto the UNIMAKER website, you can find a thing that says watch again. I've also just added a that says bonus content, which is, there's a couple of videos up there at the moment from some of the community that have submitted things that we haven't included in the live schedule, and I'll try more stuff as I go along as well, so it's worth checking back there. In terms of the agenda, so this afternoon we've got 2 sessions. So this session's on making in the curriculum, and then after that we've got a very quick 15-minute break, and then we're straight back for making for enterprise. So in this afternoon session, we've got Marie Judge from Sheffield Hallam speaking first, and talking about fast-paced making and improving confidence and communication in foundation year art and design students. So it's good to have a nice non-engineering context there. And then Avalon Cory from Exeter is going to talk about facilitating online collaboration and building 21st century skills. Then we've got Dr. Matthew Wettergreen, who is going to talk about the Oshman Engineering Design Kitchen. And then we've got our keynote, where Matthew's going to be joined by Dale Dougherty from Make and Lauren Baldesarra from engineering.com. They're going to be talking about this amazing Make projects that I'm really looking forward to and hoping to use in my course this semester. So a quick one on etiquette and things. The talk's going to be recorded, as I say. Yesterday's are already up, and I'll get today's up as soon as I can. Please do use the chat. People are introducing themselves and stuff now, which is great. We want that to be an opportunity to network. If you can, while the talks are going on, just keep your mic muted so that we're not getting loads of background noise. If you do want to ask a question in the middle, there's a little raise hand button. If you click that, then the speaker can come to you. You'll have to unmute yourself and then remember to mute yourself again afterwards. And please do share about all the things that you're enjoying about UNIMAKER, and tweet about it, hashtag UNIMAKER20, and join our LinkedIn group. Okay. So I'm going to hand over to Marie to do the first talk.
Hi, Pete.
Hi.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I've pre-recorded this, so I'm going to attempt to share my screen, but I'm not sure about the audio. So if you could let me know. We'll see how it goes. Hi, my name's Marie Judge, and I'm a senior lecturer at Sheffield Hallam University, currently teaching on the foundation year in art and design. It's an integrated foundation year, and if you're not familiar with these courses, then there are alternative routes into higher education, and typically students have not met requirements for direct entry onto a degree. Typically, they don't just lead to one degree, and you get a real mixture of students on them. So our foundation year leads on to interior, product, metalwork and jewellery, fine art, fashion management, communication, graphics, and illustration. We have about 80 students, and they're predominantly school leavers. Other universities or institutions use this year or use it in a slightly different way and encourage adult learners and returners to higher education. But we predominantly have school leavers. It's a really important year to widen participation, improving access to education. So I've been working on this year for about 4 years now. I think this is my 5th year. Previous to that, I was doing teacher education. I was training undergraduate design and technology teachers. And so some things have struck me from day one, really, and I've been looking at ways of trying to tackle these things and build them into my teaching. So some of the observations are that students would think about problems and ideas, and they talk a lot about them, but in trying to actually action them and then test them out and bring them into the world, they found that much more intimidating, especially if they were asked to draw them. Many of them had very low confidence in sketching. Students hadn't learned that the ideas and solutions develop organically and would seem to expect a very linear process. You do this, and then you do this, and then you do this, and it all sort of happens in that way. So I really wanted to try and tackle that and open that idea that it's much more messy, I suppose, that whole process. Consequently, they would become aware of an idea early on in the project, and then trying to persuade them to kind of look at other things or adapt or maybe combine was often met with quite a lot of resistance. They really weren't used to sharing ideas and thoughts, and doing that kind of group critique and working together was a bit of an uncomfortable thing for them, and continued to be, really. How much we tried to tackle that, it did continue to be that way. There wasn't an in-depth understanding of an issue or problem. It just wasn't giving as much space as it needed, that kind of investigation and exploration of really understanding what this issue was. It was an area that was often speeded through. And they didn't test out ideas. They often kept them to themselves, worked in isolation, made kind of small changes, or would do this thing typically where they'd design the idea they wanted, and then because they knew they had to have, or the idea was that they had to have a few different alternatives, that they'd kind of create these alternatives that they knew they weren't going to really do. It was just something they had to do. So they had the one idea and then created several ideas around that were just going to be throwaway ones. What struck me, just going back there a sec, what struck me particularly about what Alison Buxton was saying yesterday was how similar the observation she was making at kind of older primary level, seemed to be very similar observations that I'm making with my HE students. I mean, especially the things she said about the skills and holding paper. Some students just found that really tricky when I was doing that. So I find this is a really fascinating area to investigate, that maybe if those skills or the confidence isn't there in primary, maybe it just isn't, it doesn't develop. And it's my job within this year to try and develop those things, or that's beginning to be the way that I see it. So I wanted to maximise the opportunity of students from different disciplines to work together. This is the only year that they're all mixed, and then they go into their separate disciplines. And although things are becoming much broader and boundaries are being blurred much more, I saw it as a real opportunity for those students to really learn from one another, and then introduce that broader thinking around art and design and how artists and designers are working in practice. So there were some things that I really wanted to include, and these were social design, definitely thinking through making, mixed discipline collaboration, and really trying to sell that non-linear process, I suppose, or that way of working that is much more organic. So the main aims were to introduce students to social and co-design, facilitate students discussing and testing out their ideas through making, and help build confidence in sharing, developing and co-constructing ideas. So I ran a pilot over 4 consecutive days. I planned the sessions, but 2 other people delivered them for me because I was away having to assess. So this is our studio environment. Not going to look like that in COVID days. And I used some internal funding that I'd got through a grant to buy an expert maker. This is Daz Richardson, and he's a sculptor, product designer, fine artist who works out of Yorkshire Art Space. So the 4-day pilot, it was inspired by Fixworks and Fix Films. If you haven't heard of them, I encourage you to go and look them up. And we set up 2 different scenarios for the students to tackle based around reduced hand mobility. So students wore these great big welding gloves to try and remove a plug from a socket and turn a bath tap, just to simulate that idea of that reduced mobility. So what were the outcomes from that? One of the other people working with us produced this design sheet. And it was great because it kept things really contained. So this is one of the outcomes. And already I'm looking at this and I can see that there's much more sort of thinking on the page, or thinking by doing, by making, than there ever had been before. We supplied some rudimentary modelling materials, really, plasticine, where you can see there a bit of laser cut acrylic, blue foam, some odds bits and bobs of MDF and things like that. Things that could be, we haven't got a workshop in the studio, so things that could be easily manipulated with basic tools. Again, this kind of iteration and annotation we just didn't see before. So from that point of view, that collaboration and then working together did work really well. Again, you can see there wasn't a group here that didn't do this sort of thing, exploring on paper and through modelling. There's a few more of these. And then it came to the actual testing, and this is where having Daz on board was really, really important, because he could take the students off to the workshop, go into the laser cutter room, introduce them to the technicians, and then just very quickly mock up some of their ideas, and then actually test them out on the taps or the plug. We had some MA students join us. They were doing the MA in design, and they came along, and they really added an extra dimension. So this was a jewellery student, and can't quite remember where this was going. I think it was the plug socket one, and she was sort of helping them produce this body extension that would help remove the plug. I don't think that was terribly successful, but it was a really interesting way of, in terms of risk taking. Again, that was something we were really trying to encourage. So that's Daz there testing out another solution or possible solution. And then the modelling, we really encouraged the modelling, but I was just really surprised and really pleasantly surprised about the amount of kind of freedom they seem to enjoy in terms of the modelling. And so this is a picture of some of that going on. And again, that iteration thing that didn't really happen before, that refinement and trying out different things. So this group put a cover on the initial bit of plastic to pull the socket out to make it more comfortable for somebody to hold. And again, different iterations. Looking at the acrylic, obviously some of those would break quickly because of the nature of the material. That was another benefit, I suppose, is that students weren't really used to manipulating materials and understanding the material properties. So the sort of student feedback was that they really valued working in groups and in cross-disciplinary teams. Some really useful, potentially viable products were designed and tested, particularly the plug socket one. It was a really simple solution, and it worked, it worked really well. And they would definitely, we obviously had some students didn't engage with it, particularly because it wasn't assessed. So, interesting listening to the co-curricular and extracurricular talk yesterday. So this wasn't assessed, but the students that were committed to this were really committed and really motivated. And I think because we showed the videos afterwards, so they produced a video, which I haven't spoken about, have I? They produced a video of the process and showed that to everybody and did a presentation where we had an expert come along and give them some feedback. And I think because the students hadn't been involved in that, they got to see the whole process anyway. It led to similar projects with future cohorts, and it evolved into something that I call Co-Create, which I'm still working on and developing. But I see this as a really important thing to do with the foundation students. There was genuine iterative design, which used testing and feedback to develop the concept, something I hadn't seen before. And students said, well, this is some of the things that students said. It was a quick, focused and rewarding project which helped develop idea-making, practical work and design practice. This was an interesting project to take part in. It was great to see how a brief works, the concept, the development, prototypes and then final piece. I can use this layout and apply it to my future work development. I also got to meet a few people and explore different ideas. And as a fine artist, I enjoyed working in a style I'm not usually presented with. Being set a specific task with a desired outcome, it made me think with a different creative process. So the staff reflections, we got together with the MA students and everybody that had been involved afterwards and asked a few questions and just asked people to put their thoughts in the hat. So there were presenting skills involved. Students produced a short video, they did a stand-up presentation, and an expert was invited to view and give feedback. Group work, creating short films, the importance of storytelling and providing the context. For many, this was a complete new experience. It taught the design process very clearly, or hopefully what that feedback was. Maybe I should have looked into it more, but was that, it taught that one of my aims was that it taught that the design process isn't linear and is much more organic and messy. Ideas don't have to be fully formed before they you attempt to realise them or actualise them. Models don't have to be polished; they can be very sketch and using found materials. The importance of understanding a context was a really important thing. Students definitely became less precious about their ideas. The design sheets really showed that, I think. It was really marked to me when I came back and saw those design sheets and just went, wow, that's, I've never really seen that kind of work before. Generally, you have the odd student that's worked in that way, but generally, students weren't used to really exploring an idea. It allowed the maker and everyone to emerge, so everybody got a go at this way of thinking. What would benefit students were really proud of their outcomes in their videos. It wasn't assessed, as I said, but they became really invested in what they were doing. Design sheets worked really well, kept it contained. Students genuinely tested out their ideas and made improvements based on feedback, and they could demonstrate their outcomes in front of their peers. So I think that was a really important part of having the actual problem put in front of them. Students seemed visibly more confident, there was an awful lot achieved in a small amount of time. And I think I said before, it was a very new experience for most students. There were different staff with varied backgrounds, and the MA students added that extra dimension. And students had to be really, really resourceful. They didn't have a lot of time and they didn't have a lot of resource. There was no time to procrastinate. Creating the videos was really valuable. Students presented the concepts and framed their project much more effectively than before. And keeping the problem simple was a key component to the students being able to tackle it in a small, safe space of time and in a safe way. I think sometimes they're offered these kind of blue sky projects and they just find them really intimidating. So developments, core questions, experts working with students? Can we get more experts in? Can we get a broader discipline mix? We have an opportunity within the university to work across engineering, maths and social sciences. Tasks would be great to have a wider range of scenarios. How do we identify problems? Can we open source them? Can we put a kind of thing out there to find the problems? More access to workshops, facilities, materials, makers and others. Yeah, just more hands-on, more people involved. More use of rapid prototyping. It would be great to have that ability to have the machines in the studio. And then what opportunities does the online and distance provide? Can we link up with communities across the world, for example? Or, it just opens up those opportunities. And how can I develop real evidence that this works, or this this is adding something? So thanks very much for listening. If you'd like to know more or be interested in trying something similar, just as a pilot or a longer term thing, I'd be really interested in speaking to you. So thanks very much. That's my email.
Fab, thanks, Sherry. Shall we, if we have the other speakers and then go back for questions at the end of those, does that sound okay?
Yeah, fine by me. Thank you.
Great, brilliant. Thanks for that. It was really interesting, and looks like there was lots of engagement on the chat as well. So next up, we have Avalon Cory. I've seen you definitely here somewhere.
Yeah, I'm here. I just share my screen.
So Avalon's from Exeter and going to share with us a bit more about hopefully some great tips on doing stuff online. So take it away.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Yeah. So I'm Avalon. I'm a lecturer in design and project-based learning at Exeter, and I'm going to be talk about facilitating online collaboration and building 21st century skills and how we're doing that at Exeter at the moment. Hopefully you can see the whole slide, not just my presentation. Hang on. Okay, let's try this again. 1 second. Okay, sorry. Okay, that's better. Okay, so quick overview. So I'm going to be talking about the kind of new project that we've been working on in engineering, the kind of considerations that we've had due to COVID, online collaboration, online prototyping, and then obviously time for Q&A at the end. So in Exeter, last couple of years, they've been developing a new engineering program. I joined them in mid-April, just as lockdown sort of happened, to come into this and kind of work on the design and the project-based learning side of things. They've completely redeveloped the whole engineering program. So they've looked at incorporating kind of PBL into a multidisciplinary challenge project. So they look how they can take the theory and how they can make it kind of really engaging and use maker spaces, make prototypes, and incorporate entrepreneurship. So students have got 2 projects alongside a kind of theory module that they're working on. So yeah, as I mentioned, they've got an open-ended question. This year we're looking at ocean energy harvesting, but that might change year on year with the entrepreneurship focus. So students are split into groups of 8, and that's multidisciplinary. And they're working as a team, doing prototyping, leading into small-scale models. We've got a temporary makerspace we're setting up at the moment, but whilst our makerspace is kind of being built. So obviously I joined through lockdown to kind of lead this module. We had always planned to use blended learning, so we didn't have to adapt too much for our online teaching. We had to obviously make adaptations to Makerspace due to kind of social distancing, and we're still working on that at the moment. PBL group meetings, we were hoping to do a lot of person, but we've had to switch them online. And we talk about how we can kind of facilitate collaboration through that, with students not being on campus particularly, or half a group being on campus and half of them not. So what we started looking at is how we could collaborate and prototype in groups when students are based in different parts of the world. So we looked at lots of different software, trialed it out for a couple of months, and kind of a winner that came out was Mural. And this is really good because it uses online programming as a really good app. You can do project planning and peer and self-assessment along through that. So here's a little video of how that works. So hopefully you should be able to hear that. So we really want to make sure that students have this sense of connection and a sense of community. So we've created a kind of freshers board where students will be kind of getting together in Zoom calls, going out into breakout rooms, and then coming onto Mural and going through these icebreakers. So these icebreakers are really good because they just kind of break down barriers between students. They have a bit of fun, but they're also learning how to use the software at the same time. So the first one we've got set up for them is to kind of label where they are in the world. We have quite a few international students who aren't going to be based in the UK, but students might be based all over the UK as well. So this is a really nice way just to get to know where students are. They then move over and they're going to be doing their first job. What do they like about it? What didn't they like about it? Mural is really nice because you've got kind of emojis you can add pictures, you can vote on things as well really easily. So you could double click on things to kind of say your preferences when you get down into group work. There's then just another few little tasks, again, getting them to learn how to use the software. So there's a time machine little task. If you go back in time, where would you go to? They can add pictures to this, kind of add little love hearts to each other's work, things like that. Just gets them utilising it and kind of getting to know each other. What's really good about Mural is obviously this is all saved then. So if they're kind of working in their group and they're like, oh, who was that person who has this experience? They can go back to these boards and remember who was who and kind of recap that if they need to as well. There's another little fun task that has been created here where students are going to sketch themselves. So here's just kind of one we started earlier. So they could put in a picture of themselves. What are their interests? What do they find funny? What do they like doing in their free time? And again, students can come back to this and go, oh, who is that person who was really into going to the beach or into rugby? And they can see that clearly. And they're kind of building those connections that they would normally do face to face. So that's just a freshers board. So then going down into projects. So again, because students are going to be in different groups for freshers as they are going to be for their project groups, we're going to do just another couple of little icebreakers. So this is one of them. So this is a nice little icebreaker where students go off, find an object that relates to them, puts a little picture up on this, and then in the group they try and work out which picture relates to which person, and they all kind of vote and decide which person they think relates to which object. There's a really, really good app with Mural as well. So the app is great. They can take a picture through the app and it automatically uploads it to the board. It's super simple, super easy to use. So students can use that if they haven't got a laptop. It's not going to be a problem because the app is really, really well established. As I mentioned earlier, so Mural is really good for online collaboration, but it's also good for team planning. Here's some of the teams sheets that you can use. So here, this is kind of building in their 21st century skills now. We really want students to kind of take ownership of their groups and the work that they're going to be producing. So we're going to be getting them to create a kind of charter between themselves. So they're putting up their past experiences, their kind of group values, so how will you work, what is their norm to them as well. What roles are there going to be roles that are necessary in that group? Do they want a leader or a project manager? Is there anyone who's got a past experience who would like to bring that forward? And that's up to them to determine. What does success like? So how are they going to know if they've been successful or not? How do they know when to stop or when to keep pushing work? And standards of quality, this is really important. So how do they know that their work is all up to the same level? They're all going to be handing in group submissions. So how do they ensure that each part of that submission is of that same high quality? They'll then be putting that together into their own team charter. And again, they can come back to us at any point and say, well, we agreed this. Do we need to adapt it? Do we need to change it? Are we meeting that team charter that we created? As I mentioned, building the 21st century skills. A big part of this is going into industry. Students are going to need to learn to collaborate in new ways. A lot of stuff is going to be done online now. People aren't going to be travelling as much, we don't think. So they need to build in that kind of cultural competence. And this is one of the ways that we're going to be establishing that. So here is a nice little section. Students can say where they are, what time zone they are in the world, and it will work out exactly when it is best for students to meet together because of the time differences. So this is a really nice way to get that cultural competence in, get students to kind of really think about different cultures and how time zones differ. And they wouldn't necessarily have that if they were face-to-face. So I think this is one of the benefits of kind of using this software and working online. How is a team going to work? Are they going to always meet together, or are they going to go off and have kind of separate meetings and come back together? How is that going to work for them? There's lots of space built in for reflection. So what went well? What could they do better next time? And students will keep coming back to these. They'll keep recreating these for their meetings, these boards, so they can work on that and kind of improve through their journey. What tools are they going to be using? How are they going to share their files? What's in their toolbox? So we have just kind of recommended some software that they might like to use, but it's down to them, like it would be in industry, to work out what works best for them for their project. We think it's really important to get students industry ready. So we're getting them to establish their own agendas to meetings. So what do we need to do beforehand? You can't turn up to a meeting unprepared. What do you need to establish throughout the meeting, and what are the actions afterwards that you can go back to and check that those actions have been met? So we're really getting students to work on this from the very beginning. As I mentioned, there's really good project planning stuff. So this is a really nice kind of module planning overview. So students have got their kind of term one set up here. They can put their different modules in different colours, kind of put submissions in there, allocate the tasks to each other, delegate. And this way they can keep on track and keep a record of who has agreed to do what at what time. They can also create a group job sheet. Say, for example, somebody becomes poorly, they can easily move jobs in between each other to work out what's going to work well, to make sure that the work is handed in correctly and on time and to the high quality that they would like to hand it into. We're also going to teach them about kind of individual work. So how can they prioritise their own job sheet, kind of give them the facility to facilitate that happening as well. Students can use this board for kind of peer and self-assessment. We know that students often struggle giving kind of criticism to each other, even though it's constructive, and they struggle to kind of put that into words. So we've created this canvas for students to be able to give each other positive praise and kind of the things that they can work on in this real constructive environment. So we've given them kind of setting the stage, don't make it personal, don't take it personally, kind of just giving them tips for how they can be constructive with their feedback. And again, this is the 21st century skills that we're building, the collaboration, the communication, leadership as well. They need to be able to communicate with each other and tell people if they think something's not gone very well, or if a project's going in the wrong direction. They need to have that confidence, and this is what we're slowly building up. So what went well, and then what needs improvement. And again, we've got a record of this, so you can go back to this if you've done this mid-module. We'll then go back to it then at the end of the module. So look how far you've come from there. You've really worked on this. This is really great, and they can put that towards their kind of professional development then. Okay, so that's a little overview of Mural. Let's go back to the PowerPoint a second. It looks really complicated when you see the video, but all of those templates are already set up for you. So you go online and they've got kind of all of these set, so you can just click on them and adapt them for what you need. You can actually delete content or add content in that you need. So it's quite simple to set up, even if it looks quite confusing kind of from the video. So moving on from there, so that's how we're going to get students to collaborate to start with. We've then moved on to think about how can we get them to kind of collaborate with prototyping. So some of the things we looked at is kind of Lego series play, using metaphors with that Lego series play, how we can get them to do lo-fi prototyping and group prototyping. So I've got a little video now, which will just, it's a lot shorter, which will just quickly show this. Is how the students to prototype when they're not in the same physical space. So where we've worked around this is we're going to be using Mural alongside Lego series play and kind of lo-fi prototyping. So we're going to be using this setup for Lego and for Lego series play and for when they start their lo-fi prototyping. So students will kind of have their build question, which will be related to their project. They will then create either obviously something out of Lego if it's related to a Lego series play, or their lo-fi prototype out of card. I'll put this at the top here. You can see Mural is really good because you can color code and clearly see the kind of design of this that students have created. Main design at the top, and then they'll photograph the main components and break down the main components of their kind of lo-fi prototyping. The students will then get together, they'll have a Zoom call, they'll be analysing each other's kind of different components, seeing which bits they should take together and merge to create the kind of one group dynamic lo-fi prototype or Lego kind of build. The students can move this around and they can change parts of the prototype, and once they're happy with their final model, they can take a photo, upload it and put it on here. I'll then photograph the different parts of the prototype or the Lego, and then I'll add kind of a design direction below here explaining the concepts that they've come up with. This is really good because obviously students don't have to be together to do this. It could work well where half a group could go to a makerspace and say half a group is still based kind of internationally, for example, because students can kind of keep a record of the steps that they're going through. They can create a new board for each step of prototyping that they're going through, each layer of that kind of ideation. They can clearly see exactly the different parts of the components of the prototyping. This series play is great because it gets students to think differently. So we teach them to use kind of Lego bricks to represent different things. And this is really helpful for lo-fi prototyping, getting them to realise it doesn't have to be a full, finished, beautiful model, that they can put card in place and just label it with post-it notes. As long as you're communicating your ideas, it doesn't have to be physically exactly what you would create if you were to go and do your home prototyping. Okay, so that's a little just overview then of how we're using that kind of online prototyping setup really. So using the Lego in place of maybe what we would do physically in the makerspace to start with. Okay, so that was me just basically covering essentially what we're doing. Obviously, this is the first year running it, so I'm sure we'll have a lot of lessons to learn, and hopefully next year we can kind of adapt it and come back and tell you what we've learned from anything. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thanks very much. That was another really interesting presentation. There's so much content in there. I think I'll have to go back and watch it again. Lots of really good ideas of technology we can use. So yeah, we'll go with after Matthew's spoken, we'll go with some questions before we have our keynote speech, if that's okay. Obviously, people can feel free to put questions for either of our two speakers so far into the chat as well. Okay. So I'm going to hand over to Dr. Matthew Wettergreen, who is going to give us a bit of an intro to the Oshman Engineering Design Kitchen.
Hi, Peter. Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, can hear you great.
Great. So thank you for allowing me to speak. I think this session is given me a lot to think about, and it's very clear that some of the topics I'll talk about, most of the participants already are familiar with. But today I'm going to tell you about the Oshman Engineering Design Kitchen, which is a hub for undergraduate engineering innovation at Rice University. So the OEDK is the beating heart of engineering prototyping on Rice's campus. We opened over 10 years ago in 2009. And when we opened, our goal was simply to provide a space for the senior capstone students to participate in their projects there. But what it has grown into is a world-class institution for solving problems that are client-based and authentic. So this is our maker bar, and this is one of the only areas of the OEDK that I'm going to show you, because what I communicate today is that what's far more important about a makerspace than the physical space or the machines is the programming and the philosophy that guides this space. And we're a very small organization. There are 3 full-time faculty, there are 3 full-time technicians, and we have 4 support staff and 1 executive director. But we couldn't run without the students who help us to facilitate the connections that students make when they're working on their projects. And we have a number of programs that I want to share with you. One of them is Summer Experience in Engineering Design, or SEED. And this is an intense, immersive 7-week program that's designed to foster student growth in engineering design, as well as provide an international experience. And so we have students from 3 different countries that work together. Here they're shown finishing off a treehouse that was built on campus. We also have the United States' first engineering design minor, which is 18 credit hours. It includes 4 core courses that are taught specifically in the OEDK. They're elective, and they're designed to teach the engineering design process. We've been very proud of what we've been able to accomplish at Rice University with the OEDK. As I mentioned, it opened in the spring of 2009. In 2018, 2009, we had 1,200 students. Now we have 1,500 students that are using it. And 1,500 students is small for many makerspaces for total users. But at Rice, where there are roughly 4,000 undergraduates, that is a significant number of students. More than 40 design teams and clubs use the space and are interdisciplinary. 9 of the 11 engineering disciplines are use the OEDK. 38% of our student users are female, which is slightly above the national average for the United States of female representation in engineering. And the OEDK is so popular that over 5,800 people attended it. Now, I mentioned all of these things about the OEDK, but what I have to provide as a caveat to this is that you are likely to forget most of what I just told you. And that's because what we teach and what we talk about is very different than what our students learn and what they remember. And I'd ask you to reflect on your own undergraduate experience and think about the moments that you actually remember. You're not going to remember every lecture. You're not going to remember every class. But what you will remember is process knowledge, critical thinking, design. You'll remember points where you were challenged and you met that challenge, and points where you struggled. And what we believe at the OEDK is that student, not instructor-centered, student-centered models increase the engagement of the students and of the classes and of the teams. And this leads to enhanced knowledge acquisition and transfer over the long term. And what could be more engaging than authentic design projects with students and real-world clients? Clients like D. Fott, who has osteogenesis imperfecta, also known as Bones disease. He's largely confined to his wheelchair, and these students built a robotic reaching arm that lives over his shoulder and is controlled with a PlayStation controller that allows him to do many of the things that we are able to do independently without having to ask our parents or friends to do it for them. And what could be more engaging than working with the Houston Zoo to develop enrichment devices for many of their animals? So we believe that engagement like this works best when it is couched with a class on engineering design. And in fact, we have run this class called NG120, Introduction to Engineering Design, for the last 10 years or so. It's 3 credits. It's also an elective. And so students are deciding to do these classes and projects based on their motivation. We use a flipped model. So they watch the videos, they watch some process-based videos, they take a compliance-based quiz. They come into class, in the first half of the class, we practice that step of the engineering design process. And then for the second half of every class, they work in a team on their project. We believe that when you're doing a project with teams, you need to carve out time in your meeting to actually do the project. It can't be homework. And to support this class, we've developed a lot of content, some supported by the National Science Foundation. We've got all of our content and posts on YouTube. We've got a workbook that was submitted to the publisher, and we published a bit on how Introduction to Engineering Design as a freshman experience helps persistence. It helps provide context and relevancy for an engineering education. And this is the engineering design process model that we use. You may use a different one. We have 7 steps. There's the design analysis stage, there's the solution stage, and in each one we have particular gates that they need to go through while they're working on this. But the one that the OEDK excels at is in physical building. And that's because we celebrate prototyping as a method to solve problems by creating physical or digital objects. And we do this all the time and with every project. And additionally, as I'm going to show you, we celebrate using materials that are freely available, inexpensive, and easy to use. This is an example of several levels of fidelity of a prototype, from what we might call low fidelity to what we might call medium fidelity. None of these are high fidelity. We like to talk about prototyping in terms of fidelity, as I've heard others, and we like to give the analogy of Iron Man as being a high fidelity prototype. Lots of time, effort, resources, and finances have been expended in order to produce this. You can see it's shiny. It looks like everything has been designed. There's intention. And we like to say that low fidelity prototypes are inspired by 80s action hero MacGyver, whose most used tool is a paperclip. And then we like to say that our superhero of medium fidelity prototyping is those who buy and sell things on Etsy. Here is an example of one project at low, medium, and high fidelity. This is a project that's designed to help pediatric cerebral palsy patients walk. And it attaches to the chest. It helps them by keeping their arms shoulder width apart and preventing scissoring. What you see about these prototypes is that the low, medium, and high fidelity prototypes are created with completely different tools. The low fidelity prototypes can be created with scissors, tape, glue, and hand tools, whereas the high fidelity might need usage of a machine shop. As we are living in Corona world, access to medium and high fidelity prototyping facilities is very hard to access with physical distancing. Outside of Corona world, excelling in medium and high fidelity prototyping is difficult because it requires not only access to materials, but specialized training. And at the OEDK, what we believe is that there is a place for medium and high fidelity prototyping, but that low fidelity prototyping is where everyone, even seniors, even those who are trained on a machine shop, should start. And that's because excelling in low fidelity prototyping is heavily dependent upon practical ingenuity and creative problem solving. So there are three ways in which we teach prototyping in the OEDK. The first is that we encourage practical ingenuity. The second is that we lay a foundation for tool usage. And the third is that we practice creative problem solving using authentic problems. Now, these methods of prototyping were inspired by much of my humanitarian work internationally, where I've set up engineering design curriculum in Africa and in South America. And what you are looking at here is the Addis Ababa market. It's the largest open air market in Africa. They sell anything you want here. This individual on the right is selling used paper, which has been collected from the trash, flattened, and is now being sold. It sells rocks of particular sizes. And what I was impressed by when I spent time in Ethiopia was the practical ingenuity that took raw materials shown on the top to produce pieces, and that these raw materials didn't have to look like raw materials look like in the developed world, shown at the bottom, with nice, clean planks of wood or uniformly shaped pieces of plastic. And so what we teach in the OEDK is that we celebrate practical ingenuity. Raw materials are what empower prototyping, and everything is a raw material. You just need to look around and see it. So at the OEDK, we offer what we call this low fidelity prototyping cart, and it includes a number of materials that you might be familiar: Play-Doh, pipe cleaners, foam, paper, popsicle sticks. You might be thinking, now that we're living in a Corona world, how do we do this remotely? Well, we have a virtual variant, and that virtual variant is that we send our students on a prototyping scavenger hunt around their home. We take 30 minutes to do it. They catalog things that they could use to build with. And instead of telling them, look for paper, look for cardboard, we give them functions. So look for something elastic, look for something rigid, look for something that's volume filling or inert. The second method of teaching prototyping in the OEDK is that we lay a foundation for tool usage that increases students' confidence and tool proficiency while working safely through inclusive workshops and guides for their building. Every student who takes Introduction to Engineering Design goes through a birdhouse building competition. The reason we do this is so that every single student has the same level of experience with simple hand and power tools like screwdrivers, hammers, and drills. And you can see that even in an inclusive and basic level workshop, the quality of craftsmanship can range broadly, but the confidence the students gain is what is the most important in a low stress environment. We also have something called the prototyping library, which is a wall of examples of things you make with a laser cutter. And you can simply use the QR code to download the file and cut it right away. So what this does is it bumps students up in proficiency level. They don't need to design it for the first time. They can just make it using a laser cutter. The third method of teaching prototyping in the OEDK is that we tend to use authentic design challenges. And the first prompt, or one of the famous prompts at the OEDK, is build a safer Bajaj. I'm not sure whether you know what a Bajaj is, so I'm going to show you. Here it is. It's a three-wheeled motorbike or automobile. It's powered by a battery. It's called a tuk-tuk in other places, or an auto rickshaw. This is one that I saw in Ethiopia. It's extraordinarily unsafe. There are no seat belts. It goes about 45 miles an hour. You can see there's not even a front door, or there's one front door on the other side. And what you can see from the difference in paint is that this Bajaj has actually been in an accident. And when they're in accidents, they're most frequently with pedestrians who are walking across the street. So what we have done is we have created an exercise called Build a Safer Bajaj, where you are supposed to build a Bajaj that can be tested by crashing it into a wall. And if the passenger and the driver, represented by ping pong balls, stay in the Bajaj, then you have been deemed safe. And it's an exciting exercise where this one crashed. You can see the ping pong balls fall out at the very end. An exciting exercise that everyone becomes involved in. You gain proficiency and comfort in using simple materials. Now, as we moved into Corona world, we couldn't set up a zip line and test with everyone. And so we did a virtual variant, and this is called Throw a Balloon. Everybody found a balloon or made a balloon out of a Ziploc bag, and they needed to transport that balloon filled with air, not helium, as far as possible. You see the ingenuity here that the students are demonstrating. Many of them are using levers or elastic bands. On the bottom right, you can see that the student actually used a bow and arrow. It's just fascinating how excited they were about this challenge and how much they really got into it. And then you may be asking yourself, does this work? And what I want to show you is two projects that got to the end and got delivered. They started with low fidelity prototypes. They iteratively evolved it into high fidelity prototypes, and they delivered to their client. This first one was for a local restaurant in Houston that desired a kitchen grater to grate soap into your hands. And the bottom one is a flotation device for a patient with cerebral palsy who had a tracheotomy tube but liked to swim, and so they couldn't get their tracheotomy tube wet. So counterintuitively, students who start with low fidelity prototyping instead of medium or high fidelity prototyping actually produce more prototypes and ultimately achieve higher function on these prototypes than those who start with medium or high fidelity prototyping. So I want to thank you for the time today to talk about the OEDK, an innovation hub for engineering innovation here in the United States, in Houston, Texas. I want to thank many of the collaborators and co-instructors that I've had the pleasure to work with over the past 10 years at the OEDK. I want to say that the National Science Foundation supported our work. I also want to say that in March, when everybody went into Corona world, we developed a bridge ventilator called Apollo BVM and demonstrated the use of the OEDK to develop that technology. And thank you to UNIMAKER for allowing me to speak.
Thanks, Matthew. That was fantastic. This is, I'm so excited by this session. It's been fantastic so far. And we've got more great stuff to come. But before we go into our keynote, let's open the floor up for some questions. If Marie and Avalon want to come back and maybe switch your cameras back on, we can just have a brief sort of panel for 5 minutes or so before we do the keynote. So we'll have a look on the chat as well. But if you want to just switch your mic on and ask a question, then feel free to do that as well. Matthew, can you tell us a bit more about what you were doing in Addis Ababa then?
Yeah, so I do work with an organization called Rice 360, which addresses pediatric health, particularly neonatal. And in my travels to Africa, and we primarily work in Malawi, just to be clear, but well, the education department primarily works in Malawi. We visit and set up engineering design curriculum and work with faculty to help them teach in a method that is more active learning based, less didactic, involves more project-based design, and is more in line with what research-based practices now tell us is the best method for teaching engineering and courses in general.
Fantastic. Kerry says, how much do you engage with external partners, including businesses, and what influence does this bring? Kerry, was that aimed at anyone in particular? Anyone? Anyone want to answer that?
Not really in the scope of what I do at the moment, but if I'm hoping the project develops and evolves, and then, external partners would be great. We've got the opportunities in Sheffield with the AMRC, and then maybe the iForge and things like that. So, always open to trying to link up.
Yeah, in Exeter, we kind of, with PBL, we use a lot of industry kind of partners. We're lucky we have a lot of contacts we can tap into. On the Penryn campus, we've got a lot of kind of academics we can tap into as well. And it kind of, for students, it makes it feel really real to life. It makes them excited because they can see the kind of real world application. Obviously, COVID is really affecting this. Normally we do like some site visits and stuff, which we aren't able to do this year, but we're getting them to do like videos, go on site and do videos for students so they can kind of see how industry works and kind of get them excited that way instead, really.
The OEDK tries to find a client for every project. We think that if it's real, it really matters. So during the summer, we go through a thorough and onerous process of scoping our projects with clients, and we end up pitching maybe 50 projects a year that all have a client attached to it.
Okay, any more questions before we move on to our keynote? Seems there's a lot of skill stuff. Go on, Simon. Sorry.
I was just going to ask, relating curricular requirements to client desires. How do you find kind of controlling the scope of the project in the sense that you've got requirements for a curriculum that the students have to meet, but the client also has a requirement that can potentially pull in, there can be a tension between them. That I'm gesticulating and realised I haven't got my video on, but there can be a tension between the requirements of a client and the requirements of a course. How do you find that? That's particularly to our last speaker. Sorry, totally forgotten your name as I say this.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. There's always a palpable tension between user needs, stakeholder needs, client needs. The way that we structure this in our engineering curriculum is that we have freshman design, senior design, we have intermediary design, and that's how we get up to 50 projects. So in one course, a student is only being pitched on 10 projects or so. And then each client has been selected because over time, they have demonstrated that they are a client who is interested in guiding the students through this educational experience. They know ultimately that we can't promise anything to them. We're not a design firm. We're not an engineering design firm. And they know that there is a possibility that nothing will be developed. And so they're willing to basically mentor these young students for the benefit of everyone involved.
thank you. That's
great. I saw there was a question for Avalon, but you seem to have answered it in the chat. Great stuff. Okay, so again, I'm sure all of our speakers will be open to being contacted after this if you've got more questions about what they've spoken about. And as I say, definitely lots of food for thought for me, and I'm sure for others. So thanks to you three. Matthew's going to actually stay around for our next talk.
Hi, Matthew.
Good morning.
So we're just about ready to get cracking again. Yeah, I was going to get Matthew to introduce you guys. If you're happy to do that, Matthew, or do you want me to now that we've found them?
Oh, I would. I don't think I could possibly give as good an introduction as you, Peter.
Okay, that's great. Thanks. So yeah, now that we've found them, we have our keynote speakers here. So Matthew, you all met, who's from Rice University, and we've got Dale Dougherty, who is the founder of Make, which I'm sure many of you have come across. I've used it for various sort of instructional things. There's loads of great projects on there, great sort of community thing. He's also founded the Make Affairs and the Make magazine. So yeah, anyone that's interested in making, I'm sure you'll be well aware who Dale is. And we've also got Lauren Baldesarra, hopefully I've pronounced that right, who is from engineering.com and has also founded the Make projects with these guys. So the Make projects is a collaboration between engineering.com and Make, and Matthew has been using it for teaching his students. So we thought it'd be really good to sort of nice rounded sort of case study from where you can see it from both the educator side and the sort of tech innovator side. So I'll hand over to these guys, and I'm excited to hear what they've got to say.
Great, thank you. I'm going to share my screen now, so just give me a second here. So Pete, I won't be able to share my screen. It says presenters and moderators may be able to share, so just have to get that permission, and then we can get going.
Oh, really? Sorry. Yeah, I'm on it.
It's okay, yeah. But anyways, yeah, we're excited to be here to chat with everyone, and you know, we can get started quickly. But you know, in the meantime, this whole we want it to be a conversation, right? So as we're talking through some of the aspects of Make projects, please, you know, let us know if you have any questions, and at the end, we'll give some really good time to have a nice discussion with all of you. It's great because we're all in different time zones. We got the UK, we got California. Matthew, you're in Texas, right? And I'm in Toronto. So we got, I think, almost the whole globe covered, which is nice. And so it's going to be a nice 45 minutes or so. Yeah. Let's see. So there we go. Perfect. And let me share my screen. Okay. Excellent. So Matthew and Dale, can you see my presentation?
Yep.
Great. Excellent. Alrighty, let's jump right into it. So Make projects, and thank you, Pete, for introducing us. We're excited to be part of this discussion about making in the curriculum. And so let's just jump right into it. So agenda, we've already done the welcome introductions. We're going to spend a little bit of time about understanding the background and vision and why we're all here today. We're going to do a presentation and a demo of our platform, talk a little bit about, you know, what it is and how, you know, we've been really adapting it for the education space, especially during this unprecedented time. And then really leave, you know, as much time as we can for discussion and questions. And so jumping right into it, I'll hand it off to Dale to talk a little bit about background.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. And It's nice to talk to everyone here. Wish I could see you, but at this point in time, we'll just do it this way. We have a few slides here on this is obviously what classrooms have traditionally looked like. If you get the next slide. Then even though they change, a lot of them were still kind of lecture based, someone talking to groups of students. And I think the idea of maker spaces really was to give students, people, an opportunity to make stuff, to do stuff. Learning by doing is obviously the famous phrase from John Dewey. And I just saw that this was something that in some areas, in some types of schools, it existed, but largely hands-on experiential learning had been marginalized, if not removed from school. And so obviously we have been advocates for bringing that back, reintroducing it into school or somewhere in the community where more people would have access. And that's sort of the rationale of maker spaces. And then obviously COVID-19 happened. It closed a lot of the maker spaces. Being in person to make things became harder. And we came up with a number of strategies, I guess, to keep that going outside. But if I may say, what's the next slide, Lauren? Oh, the goal that we have here is thinking about what is the learning experience of students. What does it look like? And rather than them sitting in a chair listening, how do they engage in real world problems? How do they begin to become problem solvers and creative problem solvers? And so, at my experience through starting the magazine and doing maker fairs has been like projects define a maker. In other words, you could define making all kinds of ways in my view, but essentially when you have a project, you become a maker. When you're doing something, you become a maker. And so it's always, whether initially the magazine was, in a sense, we wanted to look for projects that some people did that other people could do, replicate them. In Maker Faire, we wanted people to be able to share their projects, because I'd visit maker spaces and I'd see really interesting projects, and I go like, nobody really knows about these projects. They're hidden, they're private, and how could we get more of these projects out into public? And I would also visit schools that had some kind of projects going on, and they were often the projects themselves, like capstone projects and such, really never saw the light of day outside the classroom. And so one of our goals, which we partnered with engineering.com on, is how do we provide a platform for students, for really all people, to share their projects? Because it's one thing to create a project, but to build a collaborative environment for projects, to be able to share your projects, not just with a public, but also with peers and others who can contribute to that project, is very important. Because another realization was that there's no real repository of projects that students are doing year to year, and so we see a lot of students doing kind of the same project because they kind of discovered the same problem, and they didn't actually go out and look and see what other people are doing to solve that problem. And if we could encourage more collaboration, that students could build on the work of others rather than restart it each time to get to the same place again, we could do something really good. So that is the rationale, I think, between our involvement at Make in Make projects. But it's really to provide a place to create and collaborate around projects. And I think what's different about it, particularly, it's a place to start a project, not just a place to go when you're done with a project. And so that's why I think, particularly in a university setting or high school even, getting students to document their project. Like I had an original idea. I tried to develop that idea. I prototyped that idea. I iterated over the prototype, and then I got somewhere. It isn't just the end result we care about, it's the process. And so really Make Projects is a way to in the way that a journal would or other things, to be able to share text, photos, files, other things that make up a project. So, what to me is interesting here, just before we go back to Lauren, is that this is not a curriculum tool. This is not a place to present, engineering or design. This is a place for students to create projects that solve problems, as I've said, that are creative expressions of ideas that they have. It is really taking it and giving that control more to the students and saying, what can you do? So let me turn it back to Lauren, and I'll come back later and talk a little bit about some of what we do.
No, perfect. And I think you summarized, Make Projects perfectly. And actually, Dave, I'm going to throw it back to you about a little bit more about Make.
Okay, sure. I thought that was later. All right.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Make.co or Make Community is the company I run. We do Make Magazine. We do quite a number of books that a lot of people don't know about. We have spread maker fairs around the world to 125 or so in a calendar year, except this year. And they're in like 48 or 50 countries. And we also just completed a summer family maker camp. So, we are really trying to, I guess, not just promote making, but to really help grow the maker community. I think the thing that I'm most proud of what we've done is not producing a magazine or event. It's actually that we've connected people together who in the past they were makers already, perhaps without necessarily knowing that term, but they didn't see themselves belonging to a community. They saw themselves working independently. The lone tinkerer sometimes is a model that I think of from the 60s and 70s. But to connect people together and to allow them to pursue projects for all kinds of reasons. So there's some number of maker fairs, and as I said, with COVID-19 this year, we've had a couple virtual maker fairs. We have not had in-person events, but they're pretty incredible if you don't know about them. Just the basic idea I had is to invite people to share their projects, and to in many cases there wasn't a place for people to do that. So whether they did cosplay or fire art or science experiments or electronics, we wanted to encourage a broad sense of what it is to make something, and turn it into a cultural event where people celebrate the creative and technical creation behind this. Next.
Nice, absolutely. Yeah, thanks,
Okay.
Dale. And,
all right.
And I just want to say, if you haven't been to a maker fair, they come back online or even join the virtual ones on Make Projects. Some of the stuff that people come up with is incredible, insane. It's amazing. And so it's always an inspiring event. So yeah. So engineering.com, real quickly about that. We are a editorial content site that really helps engineers and engineering-minded people get the latest in what's going on in the engineering world. And so everything from articles to in-depth research reports and webinars and books and white papers. And what we really love is that we go deep into topics. And so some other places might say high level, and that's amazing. But what we do is we say, if we take a topic and we say, let's go 3 layers deep into it. And so that's what engineering.com does. And, we have 3 major areas of focus. The first, obviously, is our publishing site, which is, we're rebranding it. So if you go to new.engineering.com, you'll see kind of the new direction we're going. We have our engineering forum, which is the #1 engineering forum on the web. And it's for a lot of professional engineers that are looking to solve problems in their work or at home. And it's a really, really productive site for that. And then we have our project platform. And so when we're talking about Make Projects today, it's the infrastructure that is behind it is Project Board. And what's, I think, really interesting is that Project Board, we created this a couple of years ago for engineering.com to be a place for projects for engineers and students that are becoming engineers. And then we got introduced to Dale and what they're doing at Make. And we realized how incredible of a connection the engineering community and the maker community is. And it's not even a connection, there's a massive amount of overlap, right? There's people that are engineers, especially when they're starting, when they're young and growing up. They're risk takers, they're problem solvers, they're tinkerers, and all of those adjectives are the exact same adjectives as when you think of makers, right? And so there was this incredible natural connection to say, can we bring what Make is, and Dale, you said it perfectly, all of these makers are doing projects and sometimes they're in a vacuum, and how can we use our Project Board platform to bring some of those projects to life and also help people develop them and connect that community with the engineering community. And so that's how Make Projects came about. And really, when we just talk about our community, this is pretty standard, right, in the sense that we have our STEM students that are thinking about engineering and thinking about how they can apply their technical minds to solve problems. You have universities like Sheffield that are really, and Rice University, their engineering program that is really developing these students to, be the leaders and the professionals in the world. And then what's really, really important is that connection back from the engineering professionals back to the STEM students, and giving back and continuing that loop so that every generation can solve bigger, better, and more important problems. And so when we go back to Make Projects, and I think, I'm going to breeze through this a little bit, and then we're going to go straight into the demo so you can kind of see it firsthand rather than me talking about it on a slide. But we really developed a platform that really supports project-based learning. And so we understand that with COVID right now and this kind of hybrid model of some kids are going to school and some are not, and how can you create this really important ecosystem of learning, project-based learning, but now potentially online. And so Make Projects has everything from when you're starting a class assignment to when you're working on it with students, other students and teachers, to the final presentation. And then also, how can we take some of those projects beyond the classroom? And so the whole infrastructure is set up for each of these major activities within the project itself. Or within the platform. And so I'm going to go into the live demo now, and we're going to go into overall high-level capability about, how it works, and if this is something that may be interesting or could be helpful in the university space. We're going to share some of the really cool things that we've done in the last few months, specifically around students. And then you've already met Matthew, but we're going to talk a little bit about how he and his university have been using the platform as well. So I'm going to go to
Hey, Lauren, as you're setting that up, let me just add something, if I might. Is one of the things we called it Maker Fair. We'd say the greatest show and tell on earth, and it's a show and tell is like something you do in kindergarten or something early, but we thought it was actually really important for students to be able to communicate, to tell a story about their project, like how they did it, what they did, why they did it. And they did that in person, interacting with people. But you learn a lot by that interaction with others and getting the feedback. And so again, that idea that when this stuff happens in private, you have a little bit of interaction among people around your project, but when it happens more in public, you can potential there anyway is to interact with lots of other people and get perspectives that you've never encountered before.
Absolutely. Great point. Thank you. All right, so let's jump right into the demo of or what is Make Projects. So Make Projects, go to makeprojects.com. You'll see that we have our main homepage here. And this is essentially a place for all of the public projects to be on Showcase and to continue developing. And so we have, different categories that are based off of the maker mindset. We have featured projects. We have what you've contributed to, the interests that you're interested in. So if you really love technology, you can say, I really want to go straight into learning about the technology projects. And what's important to note here is that this idea of public and private, we understand that when you are doing a project, and if you're with a class and there's 6 students working on a project, you might not want it to be public to 25,000 people at the beginning, right? You might want to noodle on it, and then when you're ready, you make it public. And so we've intentionally created a very easy ability for you to make a project public or private, depending on who you are and what you need at the certain time. And so if you go into, if you click on a project, so I'm going to go into my bookmarks here. Oops. Okay. Bookmarks. And I click on a project that was a public project. What we love is that, it's set up in a way that's very easy. So you have the title, you have the header, you have teams. So once again, you can, as an owner of a project, if you're a teacher, you can actually invite students to a project. If you're another student, you can invite, other classmates to a project. And that allows you to, if it is a private project, to be able to work together before you make it public. And then we have, how we organize a project is either in a list view, so you can kind of see things scrolling very easily, or we have this Instagram-like grid view. And we set this up very, intentionally because, as you're working out an idea, right, you might have different buckets of work, but it's not necessarily always linear, right? You might have an idea one day and then you go develop something and then you come back to it. And so having these, what we call sections, allow you to develop different aspects of an idea or a project as it's happening. And so for this one, how this user Renata, created the project, set it up and said, here's some new ideas and existing ideas with some background information. And this was all about when there was a ventilator shortage for COVID, she engaged with the community and said, how can we help with this? And so when you click on any section, you see, the section header, you then can see all the replies. And, what's really quite interesting is that, as you see here, this was actually created on a whiteboard. And so if you go to Jump the Newest, and anyone, whether you are an owner or a contributor, when you are adding content or adding ideas to a project, you can do it in many different ways. So you can do it with a photo or upload a video. You can upload links. You can upload PDFs, files. One important thing is that we don't want to design in a vacuum. And so if you use Google Docs, if you use other types of online tools, you can integrate that into Make Projects. And then we also have like a whiteboard. So what you saw up there, someone doodling. Sometimes you just have an idea that you just want to sketch out, and so we have that here as well. And then, if you have a project or if you want to start a new project, you can go to the Start button, and we have different project templates because we understand a lot of times, it's great. Like, for example, if you have a class assignment, you can create a template, and then the students can work from it, because sometimes a blank canvas is quite scary, and so we understand that, having some sort of guide is really, really helpful, especially when you're, tinkering with new ideas. And then we also have, if you look at, the top, we have, an easy way to get my projects. And as you can see here, it's organized by private and public. A lot of mine are private, right? And that's because you're noodling on it, you're coming up with some ideas. But it's really important as well to have, you know, if you want to take your project further and get feedback from the engineering community, the make community, that you can do that as well. And then we have different resources, and this is, you know, really important to think about how to take your project further. And so if you want to be involved in the Make magazine, or if you're building your own maker space and, you know, you need software to do that, you know, these are all things that we're trying to really support people that, you know, people, teachers, students who are creating. And then we have this, actually, before I do that, let me go to my profile. When you go to your profile, you have, you know, your projects, how many, your contributions, who you're following. And what we also created was this leaderboard for engagement. And the engagement count is essentially an algorithm that looks at how you are, you know, adding projects or adding comments. And we really want to celebrate those people that are on the platform, really engaging, and not only engaging on their own projects, but engaging on other people's projects and kind of paying it forward. And so those are the type of people that we really want to give a lot of accolades to. And speaking of, this student right here, she was actually a part of our Youth Science Canada STEM Challenge. And I'm going to go into that really quickly and showcase what we did there in May. And so if we go to the Communities tab, this is because Make Projects uses the project board infrastructure. Project board can actually be utilized across many different sites. And so engineering.com, as I previously mentioned, is also in a redesign. We are trying to make it way easier for people to engage in engineering content. And so you can see a very similar type of feel, you know, Netflix style. And then also, but if you go to Youth Science Canada, Youth Science Canada was an event that came to us because of COVID. And Rennie, who is the founder of Youth Science Canada, said, I have thousands of students who are, you know, who have all of these incredible STEM or in science fair projects for their schools, grade 7 to grade 12, and now they can't showcase them. And what a shame that is. And so we said, you know, can we create an event online? And we said, absolutely. And so what we did was we created this custom site for them. In Canada, we are bilingual, so we have English and French. And so that was really important so that the French-speaking students could engage in the platform in their own way. And so everything changed to French. We created this lobby so that it felt like you really were at an event. We had a welcome video from the Canadian Space Agency. And if I were a student that, you know, was a grade 7 or grade 10 student, like, and I got a welcome video from an astronaut, I'd be like freaking out. So that was really cool that they did that for us. They were a big sponsor for the event. And then if you go into the exhibit hall, again, you see that it's very much set up like Make Projects because it is an aspect of it. So we had, for them, they had different categories for their challenge. And, you know, we had specific templates that we created for them. These are based off of scientific method. And so whether you are in English or in French, the students can actually fill out a different aspect. Let me just click on it so you can see. A different aspect of the platform, of the template, so that they didn't have to start from scratch. And it was good because also for the challenge, it was, you know, important that, you know, everything was certified as their own work and things like that, so that it was really legitimate. You click your category, and then it created a project for you. And this was great. And then as you see, you can, you know, replace your own text, and there was different prompts based off a scientific method that the students had to fill out. And then if you go to some of the projects, what we did was we had judges, and the judges were able to award different types of awards to the students, which was really great, right? Even if you're not, you know, at the actual event, getting a ribbon is a pretty cool thing. And there was actually some different types of awards. And we also had different, just like at any conference or expo, we had exhibitors. So these exhibitors were everyone from industry, like the Canadian Museum of Nature, the Canadian Space Agency, to schools. And one of the schools that was an exhibitor was York University. And they created their own project for students to engage. And they actually had this thing called a boot camp. And this entrepreneurship boot camp happens. And they said, wow, can we actually create or take some of these, invite some of these students who have a selected number of projects, create a boot camp and actually help these students take their projects further. And so the engineering department at York University worked with a select number of projects, as you can see here. And the students actually, after the May event in August, so just a few weeks ago, were able to take their projects and develop them further. So that, I think, was really cool, because that goes back to, you know, how we as engineering comm and at MAKE, you know, it's really that continuous loop of the students, you know, showcasing something and then the community helping them take it further. And so we're really, really excited about that. And another aspect, talking about students, I wanted to share was what we did and what Matthew, how he used project board, how to use MAKE projects. And so I'm gonna show it over to him so he can take you through what they did at Rice University.
Thanks, Lauren. One of the themes that I hope emerges from this talk is that the move to more project-based or active learning education around the world has created an opportunity for us to actually connect on those projects, and not only what they look like when they're done, but what they look like while they're being worked on. And what I want to tell you a story is how Rice University was challenged to find a way to continue our engineering design program, and how MAKE projects solved that challenge for us. So our Introduction to Engineering Design class, as I told you about in the last talk, is an active learning class where students work in teams on authentic projects. And when Rice University went all online at the end of March, we were left without a way to replicate the closeness that our teams get by working together. Now, our teams join as freshmen, and they might remain friends for the rest of their undergraduate career. They persist in engineering as a result of this class. They learn professional skills that helps to get them internships. Working in this class matters for their ultimate success. And halfway through class, they actually physically work in their teams. And we needed to pivot quickly to Zoom groups, and that only solved half the problem. We were still left with a gap of how to document the work that the students were doing. Now, we use something called technical memos, which are short briefs that they write to document their process and each of the steps of the engineering design process. But what we found in MAKE projects was the ability for the students to document the work that they were completing with each step. But not only that, each meeting produced some engineering design documents, and this was what was used to document their process on MAKE projects. Can we go into whatever project of your choosing, Lauren?
Sure.
This project, called Disneyland, sought to redesign the experience of replacing the flatware and the silverware in Rice's college serveries. And we used the engineering design process that's taught at Rice and the template that exists as shown here to document each of the steps. So let's go into the April 6th updates, please. Our students meet on Tuesday and Thursday, and at the conclusion of that meeting, they would make a list of all the things they had updated, including sometimes uploading videos. Now, what MAKE projects allowed us to do was transparently document the work they had done and all of their CAD drawings, and allow the professors, the mentors, and the clients to come in and provide comments. And so if you scroll down, Lauren, you'll see that there's been a comment provided by the other co-instructor about this project. What this did was it allowed students to feel, even though they were geographically separated, like they were still part of the same group working on their projects. And the students uploaded their technical memos, drawings, CAD, as well as a list of what they did. And what we felt was that MAKE projects vibrantly provided a space for our students in the virtual world that simulated the experience that they felt in the physical world.
Awesome. Thanks, Matthew. And did you want to quickly talk about one of the kind of looking forward, some of the templates that you're thinking about using?
Yes. So as you saw Lauren talk about UScience Canada, the process for that was the scientific method. At Rice University, as well as other engineering schools, we use some version of the engineering design process. And what has been uploaded to make projects here is the Rice engineering design process, starting with how to use the template, going all the way through presenting your work. And so if you could click into brainstorming for me, please. What we've set up here that matches with the content that we have built for this course is how you, as an educator, managing students and teams, as a team or as individuals, can use the engineering design process here to both guide your project process, but also then to document it when you are ready to put it up on Make Projects. And so you can see here that there's this step decomposition. Take your design space and break it into something smaller. And then there's solution ideas. Document your brainstormed ideas with drawings or the whiteboard function or low fidelity prototypes. And we allow people to use this template in order to clearly document so that they can interact with the community.
Great, awesome. Thank you. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to quickly go back to the presentation. And so just to review some of the things that we have really pivoted and made sure that we're spending a lot of effort on is in templates, especially for teachers to give to their students as a way for them to get started and keep them on track as we're going along in a project or a semester. We have collections, and so this is something that we created for Rice University. Its ability to, within the Make Projects, community, having a place to put all of the awesome projects that are happening within each of the school themselves. To get broader exposure to the community. Oh, and then actually this is something I forgot to talk about, but what's important is that we have this feature called the class chat or community chat. And this is where you can create a private conversation with someone or have a group conversation with someone. And this is also something we can create for a classroom. So whether that's a teacher with their group of X amount of students, to a department, so mechanical engineering, the Department of Mechanical Engineering wanted to have their own community chat. We can create different things for that. And then, we also can create everything up to a custom platform. So if there is a school or department that is really interested in having their own categories and having awards and having, different aspects, these are something that we can do as well. And it's all in support of the project activities and how to really get your own communities to really uplift each other. And so, yeah, thank you. Really glad that we had this chance to talk to you. We'd love to now talk about any questions or feedback or comments you have. Oh, and if you have anything after this, if you want to noodle on it and think about it, you can connect with me directly, Lauren@engineering.com, and then we can go from there.
Thanks, Lauren, and thanks, Dale and Matthew. Can you guys see the comments in the chat? If not, I can read them out. So there's a few comments from Kerry there. Are some students better than others updating their records? I suppose that's for Matthew.
Yeah, so I'll say that there was a period where we were sort of a culture of getting the students to use this system and encouraging them to leave detailed comments and detailed media. And through encouraging them and also giving direct feedback on what they updated, we found that they were able to add better content, more quantitative and richer media. And then, although we didn't build this into the grading schema that semester, I would advocate that you could tie the progress to some documentation goals.
Do you have a sort of level of peer assessment, or you just go for the approach of trying to support the group in functioning in a healthy way?
I think that's well put. The goal of that particular course is for, among other things, to teach them the engineering design process, to have a positive experience while doing it. there are graded aspects, but documenting their work is meant to be in celebration and to provide confidence and encouragement to continue momentum.
Thanks. Related, I suppose, Kerry says if they prefer the technical aspects, how can you encourage them to document?
I think really through the same methods. We also have a number of technical documents that are due, as well as oral presentations. And we stress quantitative and numerical approaches in all things.
Okay. And a slightly more technical question, if coding is involved, does this work with GitHub?
That's a good question. I don't think, like, I mean, in terms of, you can integrate it. So if you have a link to your GitHub site, then you can add that to the project. But in terms of it being embedded within Make projects at this point, we do not. But you can link to it very, very easily.
Okay. Simon says, have you had problems with access from certain countries?
Have you have problems? Not so far, no. I think
the question on security, because I guess we have issues where certain countries, China, or the Great Firewall of China prevents them from using certain websites and things like that.
I see. I don't think so. But I think the biggest thing for us at this moment is anyone under 13. So that is more because there's a lot of, rightly so, security and important measures in place for students that are quite young. And we understand that STEM learning happens at a very early age. And so I think right now we are trying to figure out ways that students can be involved in Make projects depending on their age. And so that's for us right now a big, really, really important thing. And actually, what I forgot to mention that is, I think, very, very important is that Make projects is, for the most part, unless you want customization, free. And so anyone right now can go on to Make projects, start a project, invite, their students or, classmates or friends and work on Make projects. And I think that, obviously if you want Make customization, that's something that we can talk about. But we really wanted to, because I was just thinking about the fact that we wanted this to be open to kids. We want this to be open to everyone. And so that is a very, very important thing that critical that I forgot to mention. So.
Matthew, do you find that the kind of format fits better with the way that kids and sort of young adults are interacting online now? You said you hadn't used Blackboard before. I think, what's your sort of usual virtual learning environment at Rice, and how does that compare?
Rice uses Instructure or Canvas. I really enjoyed, and our students also did, the interface of Make projects, and it seemed to match a mental model that they had for interacting online. And let me reinforce that by saying that we did not need to do any tutorials on how to use Make projects. We did not need to give them a tour of the functionality. They immediately gravitated towards the clearly displayed functions and used it to post, videos and text and replies.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, as you can see from today, like Blackboard it can be a little bit clunky and wouldn't necessarily be my technology of choice. So I'm looking forward to trying to use Make projects this semester. Okay, Elliot, who's one of our students is a team lead in the iForge this year, actually. Just saying that he's just started a Make project and it's a significant leap ahead of Blackboard. So I'll take that.
That's great. That's excellent.
What's really important to note is that Blackboard, Moodle, Sakai, Instructure, these are all learning management systems, and you have to set up the structure and the architecture for the students to then populate it with their information. Make Projects already has that structure there, and it just lends itself towards documentation of the work that the students are doing. Or you can use the open-ended version that doesn't have the templates in order to document your process.
And I was just thinking too, I was thinking of Elliot's comments. I'm really happy that you're using Make Projects, but what would be really helpful too is that, you know, Elliot, you're using it, or anyone else on this webinar is using it as well. We would love to get your feedback on how we can improve, right? You know, Make Projects is new. We're just getting started. It's been less than a year. And so, you know, if we get feedback from you, that would be super helpful. And Nissa, who is one of our project managers at Make Projects, she created a project for educators to come together and give feedback and talk about different aspects and how we can improve. And so I don't know what the format will be, but maybe I can send out that link afterwards so that anyone that is using the platform can let us know how we can make it better for you.
Yeah, sure, and we can put stuff up on the UNIMAKER website as well, and share out with the LinkedIn community there.
Great.
Okay, any more questions for our panel?
Excellent. All right. Well, yeah, and please do reach out, Lauren@engineering.com, if you have some thoughts or questions after this session.
Same, Dale@make.co if you want to reach me.
Perfect.
And if you want any help with using Make Projects for your class, I'm m.wettergreen@rice.edu.
Great. I'll put all those. So when I put this session up online, which will hopefully be by tomorrow at some point, I'll put a contact at the bottom for your emails if you guys are okay with that.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, folks.
Guys, it's been great.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so we've got a short intermission now before we have a session on enterprise, which Kerry's going to be leading. So I can hopefully take a break and just enjoy the content. Yeah, if you want to go off and grab a drink or whatever, then we'll see you back here in about 15 minutes. If you want to carry on in the chat, then please do that as well.